December 8, 1941. The battleship Nagato lies at anchor in home waters, and in her wardrooms and along every passageway, the officers and staff of the Imperial Japanese Navy's combined fleet are celebrating. Every battleship in Battleship Row hit or sunk, the strike force withdrawing intact, fewer than 30 aircraft lost. Men are shaking hands, officers are embracing. The admiral is alone. He sits apart from all of it. The man who conceived the plan, who forced it through when the Naval General Staff opposed it, who assembled 6 carriers and the torpedo squadrons and the armor-piercing bombs and sent them across 4,000 miles of ocean, sitting in what witnesses describe as apparent depression, not relief, not satisfaction, depression. His name is Isoroku Yamamoto. He is 57 years old. He studied at Harvard. He drove American roads, toured American oil fields, played poker with Americans in the evenings until he knew how they thought and what they were made of. And when Japan asked what would happen if it went to war with the United States, Yamamoto answered plainly, "I can guarantee to put up a tough fight for the first 6 months, but I have absolutely no confidence as to what would happen if it went on for 2 or 3 years." That was the man sitting alone while everyone around him celebrated. And it raises a question the celebrations themselves cannot answer. If Yamamoto knew, if he had always known, why was he the one who built the plan? Yamamoto's story begins in 1884 in the household of a schoolmaster in rural Japan, the 7th child, born when his father was already 56 years old. His father named him for his own age. In Japanese, Isoroku means 56. It was a strange name for a child. It turned out to be fitting for a man who spent his career carrying weights that would have broken most. He rose through the Imperial Japanese Navy by ability alone. By 1919, he was ordered to Harvard. 2 years of lectures in Cambridge, Massachusetts, evenings at the poker table, and long vacations hitchhiking through the American Southwest, down into Mexico, walking through oil fields with the careful attention of a man who understood exactly what oil meant to a navy. American companies noticed. Several offered him jobs. He turned them down and went home. What he brought back was not just knowledge. It was perspective. He had seen what America was. Its roads, its fields, its scale, the ease with which it produced. He came home with a conviction he never lost, that Japan could not fight the United States and win. Not in a long war, not the way wars actually end. Through the 1930s, he climbed the ranks and did something unusual with the authority that came with him. He turned the Imperial Japanese Navy away from battleships, those massive, expensive monuments to a passing era, and toward aircraft carriers. Carrier warfare was where naval combat was going, and he saw it before most. He used that conviction to build Japan's carrier fleet into the most powerful concentration of air power the world had yet seen. He had told Prime Minister Konoye directly what would follow if Japan chose war with America. The 6-month window, the certain ruin of a prolonged fight. In September of 1941, in one of the last months before planning became preparation, he put it a different way. For a while, we'll have everything our own way, stretching out in every direction like an octopus spreading its tentacles. But it'll last for a year and a half at the most. The Naval General Staff opposed the Pearl Harbor plan. Nagumo opposed it. Most of the senior Navy men called it too risky, too complicated, too reliant on factors outside Japanese control. Yamamoto had heard every argument. He had made most of them himself. When the opposition refused to move, he threatened to resign his command. The Naval General Staff yielded. The man who believed most deeply that attacking America would lead to Japan's ruin was the one who forced the plan through. That knot at the center of this story never fully unravels. Japan did not arrive at December 7th by impulse. It arrived there by accumulation, years of expansion, years of pressure, years of decisions, each of which made the next one harder to reverse. the invasion of Manchuria in 1931, the war in China from 1937, the Japanese government's conviction that its only path to economic survival ran through its neighbor's territory. By the late 1930s, with Europe burning and colonial holdings across Southeast Asia suddenly vulnerable, Japan saw a window, one that would not stay open. French Indochina, British Malaya, Dutch Indonesia, oil, rubber, tin, everything an empire needed to sustain itself, all within reach if Japan moved before the United States could respond. Washington responded with sanctions, trade embargoes, then an oil cutoff. The reasoning was coherent. Deprive Japan of fuel, and it would moderate its ambitions. The effect was the opposite. The sanctions told Japan that time was running out, that hesitation would cost more than action. Prime Minister Tojo Hideki's government made the decision. Japan would go to war. The negotiations that continued into December were not negotiations any longer. They were theater, and everyone at the table knew it. The plan had been taking shape in Yamamoto's mind long before it became official. As early as 1927, war games at the Japanese Navy War College had examined a carrier raid against Pearl Harbor. The officer presenting that scenario was a certain Captain Yamamoto. Formal planning began in earnest in early 1941. Yamamoto's planners studied the British air attack on the Italian fleet at Taranto in November 1940. 81 aircraft, 3 Italian battleships crippled in a single night. If Britain could do that with 81 planes, Japan could do it with 400. The team worked through every technical problem in sequence. Pearl Harbor was shallow, only 40 feet of water, and conventional torpedoes would bury themselves in the mud before finding a hole. The engineers solved it. By summer of 1941, the Mark 95 torpedo had been developed, capable of running at that depth if dropped from exactly the right altitude at exactly the right speed. The pilots trained until they could do it. Then they trained until they could do it at night. Then they trained again. There was one thing the planners could not solve. The American carrier fleet, Enterprise, Lexington, Saratoga, might or might not be in port when the first aircraft reached the harbor. Those were the real targets. Everything else was secondary. Whether the carriers would be there on December 7th was a question only December 7th could answer. On November 26, 1941, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo leads the Kido Butai, the first air fleet, out of Hitokapu Bay in the Kuril Islands. 6 carriers: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, Zuikaku. 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, 11 destroyers, 408 aircraft. They turn east into the cold northern swells, running dark, running in strict radio silence, taking the most desolate sea lanes available to avoid shipping traffic and American patrols. The crossing is undetected. 4,000 miles south in Pearl Harbor, it is a quiet November becoming a quieter December. The Kido Butai rolls through heavy northern seas. In the harbor, 8 battleships moored along Ford Island's southeast shore, their anti-aircraft guns unmanned, their ammunition lockers locked, their crews thinking about church services and shore leave. 2 worlds moving toward each other. One of them has no idea. It is Sunday, December 7th, 1941. The harbor at first light is glassy calm. Warm air, temperatures in the low 70s. Sailors finishing breakfast on open decks. Church pennants being raised across the fleet. The 7 battleships of Battleship Row, Arizona, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Nevada, California, Tennessee, Maryland, sit in the early sun, massive and gray and still, moored in pairs along Ford Island. Pennsylvania is in dry dock. The anti-aircraft guns are unmanned. The ammunition to feed those guns is locked below decks. Lieutenant General Walter Short, commanding Army forces on Oahu, has ordered the aircraft arranged wingtip to wingtip in the open. He did it to prevent sabotage. A man with a bomb does less damage against tightly grouped planes than against dispersed ones spread across a field. From the ground, the aircraft are arranged to resist attack. From altitude, they are arranged for it. At 6:45 in the morning, the destroyer USS Ward encounters a midget submarine at the entrance to Pearl Harbor. The Ward attacks, depth charges. The submarine heels over and goes down. At 6:53, the Ward radios Navy headquarters. "We have dropped depth charges upon sub operating in defensive sea area." The report is logged, assessed as a probable false contact. No alarm is raised. At 7:02, two Army privates at the Opana radar station on the northern tip of Oahu watch something appear on their equipment. More than 50 aircraft bearing south toward the island, still over 100 miles out. Private George Elliott maps the return, a dense, unmistakable signature. They call Fort Shafter. The duty officer listens. He knows a flight of B-17 bombers is inbound from the mainland that morning. That is almost certainly what this is. Don't worry about it. Two separate alarms within the span of 1 hour. A submarine at the harbor entrance, an enormous radar return bearing directly toward Oahu. Both dismissed. Not through negligence, not through conspiracy, through the most ordinary thing imaginable. Men seeing what they expected to see, rather than what was there. At 7:49 in the morning, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida is in the air above the northern coast of Oahu, looking down at Pearl Harbor spread below him in the early light. The harbor is exactly as the reconnaissance photographs showed it. Flat water, the battleships lined up along Ford Island, patient and immobile. Fuchida does not shout anything. Japanese aircraft relied on radio telegraph, more reliable over distance than voice. His telegraph operator taps out the signal in Wabun code 3 times, a pre-arranged sequence meaning attack, surprise achieved, Tora, Tora, Tora. It is 7:55 when the first wave arrives over Pearl Harbor. 183 aircraft. Torpedo planes come in low over the water, so low the pilots can see the men on deck in the moment before the torpedoes are running. West Virginia takes hits in the first minutes. Oklahoma takes 6 torpedoes so fast she begins to roll before anyone on shore fully understands what is happening. She capsizes. 429 men trapped inside an upturned hull, breathing in the dark, listening to the water rise around them. Rescue parties spend hours cutting through steel plate with acetylene torches. Some of those men they reach. Most they do not. Then the Arizona. An armor-piercing bomb, a converted 16-inch shell, strikes her forward magazine. There is the impact, then a fraction of a second of something close to silence. Then the detonation of more than 1 million pounds of gunpowder, all at once. The explosion is visible from Honolulu. A tower of black smoke and orange fire erupts hundreds of feet into the air. The forward section of the ship disintegrates. The shockwave crosses the harbor in an instant. Men are knocked off the decks of neighboring ships, concussed, thrown, some killed by the pressure wave alone. The harbor's surface is covered in burning oil within minutes. Most of Arizona's crew dies in the single second. 1,177 men. Half of every American killed at Pearl Harbor that day. On one ship, in one moment. The base is fighting back. Ammunition lockers are being forced open by hand. Guns are coming online. But the response is improvised and ragged against an assault planned to the minute, and the damage accumulates faster than any defense can absorb it. Then the Nevada moves. She is the only battleship that gets underway under her own power. Her crew had managed to get up steam, and now she is moving, heading toward the channel mouth, toward open water. Japanese dive bombers converge on her immediately. They understand what it means if Nevada reaches the channel. A battleship sunk at the harbor, mouth seals every ship still inside. Her captain makes the decision. He grounds her deliberately at Hospital Point, just short of the channel, keeping the passage clear. She takes 6 bombs and a torpedo, She burns. She does not sink. She makes her run. At 8:54, the second wave comes in. 170 aircraft. But something has changed. The base is alert now. Guns are manned. Men who were having breakfast an hour ago are at their stations, and they are effective. 20 Japanese aircraft go down to anti-aircraft fire. The element of surprise, the single most valuable thing Japan brought to Pearl Harbor, is gone. At 9:45, the last Japanese aircraft turns away. In 90 minutes, 2,403 Americans dead, 1,178 wounded, 8 battleships damaged or sunk, 188 aircraft destroyed. The harbor is covered in smoke and burning oil, and the wreck of Arizona is settling into the mud with more than 1,000 men still inside. The smoke is still rising when the Kido Butai begins its withdrawal. Fuchida is among the last aircraft to clear the harbor. He counts what he can see from altitude on the way home. And there are things he cannot see from the air that matter more than anything burning below him. The carriers are not in the harbor. Enterprise was expected back the morning of December 7th. She had been due in the day before, returning from a mission to Wake Island, and bad weather had delayed her task force by 1 day. She will not reach Pearl Harbor until the following evening. The ship moored in the berth where Enterprise was expected. An old target vessel called Utah, a former battleship long stripped of her guns, has been struck by Japanese bombs in her place. Lexington is at sea. Saratoga is at sea. All 3 carriers, the 3 warships Yamamoto's entire plan was designed to destroy, are intact, unharmed, somewhere beyond the horizon. The oil tanks are untouched. 4.5 million barrels of fuel stored above the harbor, enough to have paralyzed the Pacific Fleet for more than a year. The maintenance shops are intact. The dry docks are intact. The repair infrastructure that would allow the Pacific Fleet to rebuild itself in place, rather than limping 6,000 miles to the American mainland, untouched. Commander Fuchida and Commander Minoru Genda urge Vice Admiral Nagumo to launch a 3rd wave. Target the oil facilities, the maintenance shops, the dry docks, finish what the first 2 waves started. Nagumo's reasoning is methodical and not without logic. His force is now within range of American land-based bombers. The American carrier's location is still unknown. Fuel is a concern. He has achieved what the operation required. He declines. The Kido Butai turns for home. Yamamoto calls it a catastrophic error. He is categorical. Admiral Chester Nimitz, who will soon take command of the shattered Pacific Fleet, later estimates that destroying the oil facilities alone would have prolonged the war in the Pacific by 2 years. 7 battleships struck in 90 minutes. The apparent spine of American sea power in the Pacific on the floor of a harbor. And now, the revelation the smoke had concealed. Battleships were already obsolete. Yamamoto himself had spent the previous decade saying so. He had redesigned Japan's entire navy around the carrier. The weapon Japan aimed to destroy was not a battleship. It was a carrier, and all 3 American carriers had slipped through his hands on a day of bad weather. 5 of the 7 stricken battleships returned to service. California came back. West Virginia came back. Nevada came back. She would eventually provide naval gunfire support on the beaches of Normandy. The weapon Japan had aimed to destroy was mostly still in existence, already being supplanted by the weapon that had been at sea when the bombs fell. On December 8, 1941, President Franklin Roosevelt stands before a joint session of Congress. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. Congress declares war within the hour. 3 days later, Germany and Italy declare war on the United States, and a nation that had spent 2 years debating whether Europe's catastrophe was its concern is unified instantly, completely, in a way no political argument could have managed. The reluctant nation is reluctant no longer. Pearl Harbor was not the only blow struck that morning. 40 minutes before Fuchida's aircraft reached Ford Island, Japanese forces had already invaded Malaya. Within the next 24 hours, Hong Kong, Guam, the Philippines, Wake Island, Singapore, Midway. A coordinated offensive across the entire Pacific. Japan had calculated that if the American fleet were crippled and the region's territory seized in a single stroke, the United States would negotiate. That Americans would not sustain the cost of a war fought across 6,000 miles of ocean to recover places most of them could not find on a map. Yamamoto had warned them this was wrong. In writing, in direct conversation with the Prime Minister, in documented letters that survive to this day. He had been heard. He had not been heeded. 6 months. That was the window he had named. The Battle of Midway concluded exactly 6 months after Pearl Harbor. Aircraft from Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, the 3 carriers that were not in the harbor on December 7th, found 4 of the 6 carriers of the Kido Butai and sent them to the bottom of the Pacific in 3 days. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. Gone in 3 days, exactly within the window Yamamoto had predicted. He had been right. On April 18, 1943, American code breakers decoded Admiral Yamamoto's personal flight itinerary for an inspection tour of Japanese bases in the South Pacific. The schedule had been transmitted in Japanese naval code. The code had been broken. 16 P-38 Lightning fighters were dispatched from Guadalcanal at the edge of their operational range. Over the island of Bougainville, over territory Japan still controlled, they found Yamamoto's plane and shot it down. He died in the wreckage. He had been in the air in what should have been complete operational security, killed by signals intelligence, a product of exactly the vast American institutional capacity he had spent his career warning about. He had predicted this. He had warned them. He had forced through the attack that woke the machine that eventually found him. There is a famous line attributed to Yamamoto in the hours after Pearl Harbor, that he feared he had awakened a sleeping giant and filled it with terrible resolve. The line appears in the 1970 film Tora. It has no documentary source. Gordon Prang, who wrote the definitive history of Pearl Harbor and interviewed nearly every surviving participant, never found it. Hiroyuki Agawa, who wrote the definitive English biography of Yamamoto, never found it. The line cannot be traced to any letter, diary, or record that anyone has been able to produce. What Yamamoto actually wrote, on January 9, 1942, 5 weeks after the attack, in a private letter to a Japanese journalist, was this: "A military man can scarcely pride himself on having smitten a sleeping enemy. It is more a matter of shame, simply, for the one smitten. I would rather you made your appraisal after seeing what the enemy does, since it is certain that, angered and outraged, he will soon launch a determined counterattack. Not a boast, not a threat, an acknowledgement of shame and a prediction delivered with the quiet precision of a man who had never doubted how it would end." Written 5 weeks after the attack, he spent a year planning, while Japan was still celebrating, while his staff was still congratulating itself. Written alone. Mitsuo Fuchida, the man who led the first wave, who transmitted the signal that began it all, survived the war. In 1950, he converted to Christianity. He spent the rest of his life in the United States speaking about reconciliation. His papers are held at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. The USS Arizona is still in Pearl Harbor. She was never raised. She sits where she settled on the morning of December 7th, 1941, and still bleeds. A thin, slow slick of oil rising from her hull into the harbor water, the wound open after 80 years. 1,177 men are still inside. Yamamoto alone had spent the day after the attack in apparent depression. He had built the plan, watched it succeed, and returned to his cabin. He had done his duty. He had been right about every consequence to the last detail. The celebration went on around him. He sat in the quiet and said nothing.